Hi, this is Greg Johnson with Blue Book, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review video edition with our old pal Pamela Riemenschneider, who's now a retail consultant and expert in the field. And we have to say it is Stanley Cup playoff season, so that is why we're both sporting the sweaters of teams who are alive. Yours a little more so than mine. Mine is
Barely.
similar too.
This is my vintage Patrick Waugh jersey, though. So this was from a time when the Avs were definitely dominant.
Yeah, well, my jersey corresponds to the last Canadian team to win a Stanley Cup, which
Also with
was
Patrick Waugh.
over 30 years ago. And that's when I got this jersey, because that's when I became a fan.
We're like, hey, same guy.
It is the same guy, but I don't have his name on mine because I don't like goalies. But we're going to talk about some of the issues in the produce industry. Unfortunately, neither of us went to CPMA this year because it happened to coincide with the Viva Fresh in Houston, which we both were at. And I would say, aside from a company's individual promotions and whatnot, I tariffs were definitely the biggest topic of conversation. And that workshop we were both in had people crowding outside the door trying to peek in.
Right. Yeah. The tariff talk. I had been the week before Viva Fresh. I had been in San Diego at the Mexico Table Grape Spring Summit as a keynote speaker, and everyone wanted to know what I knew about tariffs at the time. And I was there to talk about retail trends and innovation and TikTok, but I scrapped TikTok from my talk. And then while I was waiting to get on the stage, I got an email from my news feed that said, "Hey, guess what? TikTok is not banned again." And I feel like the back and forth is almost the same as with what's going on with the tariffs. But I think you and I and everyone I talked to at Viva Fresh after this is still confused.
There is confusion. I mean, there are various reasonable economic arguments on whether or not it's a good plan to implement. But the problem is the way it's been implemented, and it may work as far as renegotiating different trade deals with different countries, but there's confusion. And for like, I don't know, 3 weeks, it seemed like I was writing a tariff story every other day because another big piece of news changed. And I mean, the only thing that's kind of changed since then is the tomato suspension agreement is being dropped, which is
Yeah.
outside of tariffs. But the biggest problem with produce companies is it's hard to prepare. And like one of our friends, John Pandel with Pandel Brothers, told me, their company has had to put millions of dollars aside to potentially pay for tariffs if something is implemented from the companies that they import from. And so that's money that's not being used to grow the business. And so that's a bad thing. That could be used for much better means.
Well, yeah, and the lack of clarity on exactly what this means, especially when they talk about they're not for right now exempting things that do not grow in the U.S. like bananas and other tropicals. If there is a U.S. besides Hawaii pineapple deal, I'd like to know about it.
There
Um,
is
there's no clarity on these things, and it makes no sense to tariff imported produce when the United States is not competitive. So there's so much nuance, and right now we have no nuance. Is the problem?
It is the problem. And I know the produce industry is arguing for our exemptions from these, but they get lumped in. I mean, we've seen apples get caught in tariff crossfire when, they're not doing anything wrong, but because we're tariffing steel from India or China, all of a sudden the tariffs for apples going into those countries skyrockets and tanks the market. So you would like to think produce could be exempted because it does not serve the purposes of bringing trade imbalance to the U.S. When we cannot possibly grow commercial quantities of some of these items. I mean, even take avocados. It's impossible to fill U.S. demand with just domestic grown avocados.
It
It's
does not
impossible.
matter
So
how
there's no
good
point in
California season
punishing
is.
Mexico. I just don't. it does not seem like we have much of a voice yet. But in a couple months, the Washington conference will be in DC, so maybe we'll find an audience there.
Maybe for now, we'll just have to get whiplash from the news cycle, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's good if your business is the news cycle, right? And one thing we have to talk about, of course, is retail, since you are the retail consultant expert in the field. I was fascinated by a recent report from Walmart, which was from like a investors conference where they talked about some of their long-term strategy, and you saw that too. It sounds like their investments in digital are paying off, like we talked about a year ago on whether or not it would happen, and we thought it probably would, and it looks like it is, and now they're bragging about it.
Yeah, here's the thing is, so I've pivoted to I've joined the speaker circuit talking about retail innovation. I'll be at the retail conference next week in Dallas and as an attendee, and then I'm keynoting the Four Seasons Produce Fresh Fest in Philadelphia in May. And one of my talking points is about digital and about innovation. And I back in the day could not have thought that a retailer would put so much into proxy shopping, right? So someone shopping for you. And when I heard that Walmart said that it is profitable in digital, I was, I'm of course sitting up and taking notice because are they still talking about having that proxy shopper? And then I went through the investor meeting and looked at it, and they said that as much as 50% of their e-commerce fulfillment is still running through these sophisticated fulfillment centers. So that's not the grocery part of it. So is grocery proxy shoppers profitable for retailers? Well, have you gone through the store lately? Oh, because you spend too much time in Aldi, right?
They do have those shoppers in there, and I see them at Hy-Vee too, and my price chopper, and I do not like them. They are in the way.
They are in the way. I see a lot of complaints about them on social media, and I actually have saved some videos to add to my presentations where people griping about all of the proxy. I'm calling it a proxy shopper, right? It's the person that you are basically paying to shop for you. How is this making money? It just doesn't seem like. And I'm guessing that it's going to have to be based on scale and basket size, because if you're going to take the time to order online, you're going to like add every single little thing to your order, and you're going to want to make it count. And we've talked about this, and the anecdotal data of it all is, when you talk about how many people brick meets click every month, we see double digit growth in grocery pickup, right?
Yeah.
And wasn't it like 20% last month?
Yeah,
Um,
it's around 20% year over year last month in May or in March.
yeah. So when we talk about who are all of these people who don't want to go into the store, I think we have to step out of our produce centric and our grocery centric, and I always shop for myself. Those of us in the produce industry, by and large, like to go to the store, right? We want to see what's in the store. And when you go out and you talk to the regular people, my social hour is at soccer practice, right? And almost everyone there is a grocery pickup person. Almost all of my friends, they're like, oh, I never go into the store anymore. I just pick up. And it just shocks me because that's so unfathomable to me. How are retailers making money on this? They're making money on this because everyone's doing it, I guess.
Well, one of the things that we were skeptical it would ever take off is we did not think that people would trust these proxy shoppers to
Right.
get the right fruits and vegetables for them. And that seems to have been overcome.
That seems to have been overcome. And I have an asterisk on that because I think it's overcome when the retailer is the one who's hiring the shopper, right? I know plenty of people who work for retail. Close friends of mine work for retail, and they talk about who their shoppers are. And there are people who have some experience. Some of them are teenagers, actually, honestly, that the kids who work in the store who either are bagging groceries or picking groceries, but they're trained up by the retailer. The one instance where I think it's also been widely panned on Instacart is the dude shopper on Instacart. No, nobody trusts a dude to shop for them for their Instagram
That
shoppers.
is a gross and unfair stereotype.
But it's a stereotype nonetheless. I mean, if it happens over and over and over again, where you order something and they send you a picture and it's like I can't find the XYZ and it's like right there in front of you in the picture, a nugget of that has to be true. But that is true where we're talking about. I think retailers have found a way to overcome the distrust in who's picking their shopping, but there are some cases, especially when we're talking about third-party services, DoorDash, Uber Eats, who's doing the shopping for you, because it's not necessarily the best experience, and those are the ones that are suffering. But when it's an in-house situation, there's a whole lot of trust. Retailers have done a lot of work to build trust in that.
And it's not just Walmart, right?
No, not just Walmart. I think even, my local retailer that I talk about a lot, HEB, is one of the ones that has done a tremendous job of. And here's the thing, where we're annoyed by those in-store shoppers, but those in-store shoppers are advertising. They're advertising that service. The fact that you have to go around them in the store and you're watching them shop, you're seeing how they do it. Is that building some trust when you see who's doing the shopping while you're doing the shopping, instead of doing the dark store, which is what I thought that would have happened, the fulfillment center, the automation, the dark store. All of that seemed logical, but expensive and really hard as a startup. When you can do in store, have the shopper there, it's showing people that you're doing the online pickup, it's showing people who's doing your shopping for you when you're actually in the store seeing them. I have reversed my opinion on that, and I actually think that it's a pretty smart strategy now. And I'm the first to admit that I'm wrong sometimes, and I think I was wrong 10 years ago when I said there's no way that you're going to make money by paying someone to stack the apples and then paying someone else to pick the apples and then delivering it to someone. And maybe if you do cut off that delivery part of it and do the grocery pickup, that's where you're going to save the money and make it make sense.
And it makes more sense for the consumer because they save that extra cost of having it delivered, right?
Right. Yeah. You save the delivery fees. Some retailers do charge a little bit higher prices when you're shopping in store, but I've heard so many firsthand accounts of shoppers who prefer to shop online because they're not um, lured by the impulse. And Anne Marie does a really great job in The Power of Produce of talking about what retailers need to make sure that they're overcoming on the online grocery thing. Is we cannot lose the impulse shop, and showing some really great examples of suggestive selling when we're selling online, to make sure that we don't lose that buying with your eyes, buying with your smell, the senses, and everything that you come to appreciate when you're buying in store in person.
So it sounds like we're coming to the conclusion that this online experience is growing and not going to go away. And so now the produce industry needs to react not as if it's a potential trend, but a growing reality in the market.
Yeah, I think we have turned the corner from trend into reality, especially on this. And I think that this is something that, while we will see some contraction in the momentum depending on whatever happens with grocery prices and people's pocketbooks and bottom line, I think that we're not going to see it completely go away. Definitely not. But it may slow. The momentum may slow depending on what goes on financially and economically. But it's here to stay. It has gone from trend to reality for sure.
Well, as far as pricing goes, food inflation is practically dropped off to nothing. And in fact, the last inflation report we had, overall fruits and vegetables had deflation year over year. So that's a good thing. Now, the tariffs, once they're fully implemented, that could change things, and that could also change the Trump administration's strategy.
Yeah.
So, well, food inflation is a big deal. That really makes people mad.
Yeah, and the tomato suspension agreement is going to be such a huge one because it's not just the tomatoes that you buy in the store. And the thing is, the 90-day period ends in the summer, and anything that they do is not going to be on that much of the imported Mexican product. We're not going to see those effects until we start into the import season, which is going to be October, November, December into the winter. So we may not feel it until it's too late.
Yeah,
Some of this stuff. So we'll have to keep. I've seen so many different reports on what's going to happen with the suspension agreement. Of course, the import organizations say this is terrible. The domestic growers think it's great. But we're going to have to wait because we've had what, 25 years of suspension agreement, 20 years of suspension agreement. And to just go without it and go with whatever tariff gets put on, or they may do the anti-dumping investigation and find out that there was no dumping. you know that's another part of it.
they could. It sounds like that they are alleging that there is significant dumping. So we'll have to see what the numbers say. But you're absolutely right. Once it gets implemented, it'll be the summer, and there is not much imported tomatoes then. I mean, I can grow tomatoes in my own yard at that time of the year, and I'm not a skilled grower. So lots of people who know what they're doing, like professionals, that's not a
Right.
problem. It'll be in the fall. But I mean, considering how fast things change, I'm not willing to look ahead to the fall. I look ahead a week or two.
We'll have to check back in.
Yeah, I think we might have to. Well, I guess that'll be it for this week in review special edition. If you are not signed up for the Produce Reporter, you can do that right on our website, and we hope you do. And who knows, maybe you'll see another video edition in the future. Meanwhile, when we don't have the video edition, I am doing a written week in review that comes out every Friday. It won't be this week since we have a video edition. So hopefully we will again. But in the meantime, please read that one and everything. I don't know if you've noticed, but we do have a new website, Pamela.
I did notice that. Look at you guys. Lots of new features happening with Blue Book. Awesome.
You never know. Hopefully, it all just gets through and works. So that's the main goal. All right, we'll check in with you next time.
See ya.